We're looking at children who are just that little bit older. So I'm thinking around 7 or 8 years of age. So they've been through all the typical development and should be really at that stage where all their speech should be clear. Particularly by 8, we would expect all speech sounds to now be said correctly, the way that an adult would speak. Let's start off by looking at the V sound, so the voiced V. V. The most typical thing that could be done with this is changing it to a B. We know that a 4-year-old might say video, or I like you very much. They might say, can I have 5? Of course, what they're doing is they're stopping the long fricative V, and they're stopping it to a B, but they're maintaining the same place at the front and the same voicing. So if you're working on V and the child can already say F, that's how you'll get your mouth position. F, and then you'll turn on the voice. V. When we're counting with the 7, we've got the V in the middle. And with 5, we've got the V on the end. 12, which isn't shown on this page, also has V on the end. So aren't numbers so helpful for articulation programs? So with 7, because it's said so quickly, if you're wanting to work on that V, don't forget to break it into chunks. 7, and allow time to get the mouth position ready. 7. When it's on the end, I like to show children that the mouth position is the same for the beginning and the end of the word. 5. So at first you might even do both of them a bit like an F or a F. 5, 5. And then turn the voice on for the last consonant. 5, 5. In this age group, we do want to work on a lisp if it's still persisting. So that's where the tongue will be through. We want to say to that child, or it could even be a teenager or even an adult, to think about the teeth coming together. When the children are very young, I'll say that's like a cage. Close your cage, and the tongue could be like a snake, making a snake sound. With a lisp, the tongue will be showing through. So I'll say, I don't want to see your snake. Put it inside the cage. Close the cage. Now make the snake sound, but don't let the snake out. If they push too hard, it'll sound distorted. So that's just too much pressure and too much pushing. So you need to get the tongue back just off a little bit so that it's only lightly touching that alveolar ridge. Should be a really high-pitched, hissy sound too. So with the older children or the teenager or the adult, I tell them to close your eyes and just listen to the quality of my sound. Almost sounds a bit like a gas leak, a very high-pitched sound, very fine. and just remind the person not to have too much pressure, to make it quite soft, and see if they can just match the sound. So that trick might work for you as well. Remember, if they are a bit older, they will have been saying it the wrong way for a very long time. So it's going to need a lot of practice in isolation and just in very simple words and in each word position. So plurals are a great way to practice, because anything ending in S, like two cats, you'll have your S. And the paired sound that might go with it is the Z, the voiced Z. And remember, when you're working on plurals, if the last consonant before the S is voiced, then the S on the end will actually be pronounced as a Z, like dog. Z. It's going to be the Z sound. Another later developing sound that might be taught to an older child or a teenager or even an adult is R. Now, R is one of the hardest sounds because you can't see it at all. Watch. R. It's happening right inside the mouth. You just have to try and visualize it, but the sides of the tongue are actually going against the teeth. If you could take a photo inside, you'd see that there's pressure against those back molars. Try to feel that as you say it. Can you sort of feel the tongue spreading out and against the teeth? It can even help to clench the back teeth to get that sensation. Although we might not have the teeth closed when we say it, but it's a good way to get that idea of that sort of anchor point. Yeah, I don't really squeeze my teeth fully, but I can feel my tongue against my teeth. Red. Now, what happens with this sound is two things. Sometimes it's just completely swapped for the W, which, if you remember, is the glide, which is why we call it gliding. So instead of red, we might get wed. Have a listen to that in our numbers. In 3, can you hear the R? 3. It can just get changed to a W. 3. 3. 3. So when it's just completely swapped to a W, we call that gliding, because the glide W is being used. And we need to teach the R sound in isolation. I like to think of it as a bit like saying treasure. Treasure. Almost putting in that American on the end. Or a growl. Grrr. The G sort of gets the tongue back, ready for the sound. Grrr. Some people like to do like a pirate sound. Arr. The other possibility with is it's not being glided, it's not going to a w, but it's almost going to like a vowel. So it's sort of like going ooh, ooh. So instead of red, you might get wed, wed. And it's kind of frustrating because it's sort of in between. Have a listen. Red, wed. Try making both of those. Do your normal one. Red. And feel where your tongue is. Red. And now wed. Can you feel it's like moved to the front of the mouth and the tongue involvement's kind of dropped out? So correct. Red. Lots of tongue. Incorrect. Wed. It's more sort of focused at the front. It's kind of like an approximation of or sort of halfway between and w. Sometimes it can be what happens when someone's trying really hard to get but just can't. It's important that you don't say to the person, oh yeah, you've got it, and sort of send them off going wed, because it actually doesn't sound right, does it? So you've really got to practice at that in isolation stage until you get Now I've sometimes taken up to 9 months of seeing someone to get that sound, so be ready to be patient. Really growling, biting down, and getting the tongue in the right position. Could be worth doing what I said before about closing your eyes and listening to the sound. Now most children do get this by 3 or 4, so we know that a lot of children get it just through listening and hearing it and trying it, and they get it. So it's certainly not a problem for everyone, but it is one that can be difficult, and it can be those sort of 7 and 8-year-olds that haven't quite mastered it where we really need to help them. So the last consonant sound to work on is the TH, the voiceless and the voiced. Now if we start with the voiceless sound, come back to our counting. 3. So this is tricky because it's a consonant cluster, isn't it? And together. 3. So if a child can't say and also can't say they might say fwee, and it's sounding quite immature. That would be fine for a 3-year-old to say fwee, but by the time they're 8, we'd want them to say 3 correctly. You can also use numbers for You can try 13, 23, 30. What about 33? And are very close in how they sound. Close your eyes for a minute and see if you can hear the difference. Now open your eyes, and I'm going to cover my mouth so you can only hear it. See if you can hear the difference. It's very close, isn't it? th, sometimes is correct in the word initial position, like in the and they, but it's substituted for a V in the middle, like father or mother, and particularly at the end, like in the word with. Are they coming with you? If you hear a replacement or a substitution for v, it could be a d. So then we have stopping to d, and that might sound like a day coming, or give it to dem. When that's the case, that's a more significant substitution, and we would probably start working on that from as early as 4 or 5. But if it's just the voiceless, then we often don't work on that until about 6 or 7, because it's not really even a delay until about 8. It's a good idea to be showing children from about 4 or 5 to stick your tongue out, just so that they can get the correct sound. But we do need to be sensitive that some families, the whole family might use f instead of f, and that can either be because that is their accent. So some places, like in London, in England, and some places f is actually the phoneme that's used. And in some families, it could be that the parents themselves did not get the opportunity for speech therapy and haven't learnt to say f, even though in their own accent, we would be expecting f to be correct. So we just have to be sensitive that a child might be saying free because both parents are also saying that. And then it's really up to discussing with the parents, is that something you're comfortable for us to work on? Would you like your child to be saying the f sound correctly? So remember, the best way to teach this one is probably to have a mirror so you can see the tongue coming out. With, father, mother. And this is a really good one to be working on with your child from about age 6, but also be listening out for that child who's 8 or 9 who still hasn't mastered it, and just be giving them some help with that. And I think it's quite reasonable to have a speech pathology program, particularly from about 8 years and older, for the v and f sounds. You just have to work out whatever's going to get the best result, but it can be really hard.